Hi, this is John Harcher, and welcome to episode 4 of Left Turn at Albuquerque. Well, this was a nice surprise, getting not one, but 2 new releases within a few months after starting the show. We'll be looking at Looney Tunes Collector's Choice Volume 2, with more Blu-ray debuts from the company's major stars, as well as a lot of lesser-known ones.
I knew I should have made a left turn at Albuquerque. I knew I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque. I knew I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque. I should have turned left at Albuquerque.
Sorry this one's a little later than the beginning of the month. That's why I put out the bonus disc episode before Thanksgiving. This release was supposed to be out on November 28th, but it slipped a couple of weeks. So that's why we're doing this now right before Christmas. There's quite a number of tunes on this disc that appeared as bonuses on the Warner DVDs, a lot of them with Errol Flynn movies for some reason. We got 25 of these to go, so let's not waste any time. Behind the Meatball is from 1945, directed by Frank Tashlin and Robert McKimson, more on that in a minute, and written by Melvin Miller. Notice no director credit. During the days of food rationing, I wonder how many points the dogs got, 3 of the canines battle over a steak. Now, when we did Volume 1, I mentioned that Daffy Doodles was the first time that McKimson got director's credit, but it appears this one was actually released first. Tashlin left the studios with several tunes in various state of production, and McKimson took over his unit. Now, it may have been Bob went to work on Daffy Doodles first, but this one came out before it. And this wasn't the last time we got director confusion. There's an open question on what Bob Clampett worked on before Art Davis took over his unit. This one was never on TV as far as I remember. When I took a look on IMDb about it, one of the reviewers said the exact same thing. The main dog here is similar to the one Elmer used on his experiments in Tashlin's uncredited hair remover. There's also a bit of his risque-ism with the wife in her stockings. Overall, the short looks nice, just don't look too closely. The part where the dog is eating the veggie dog food, tons of debris. The backgrounds look like they're Bob Ross paintings or something like that, puffy clouds. It's very odd. Brother Brat is from 1944, directed by Frank Tashlin and just Frank Tashlin, written by Melvin Miller as well. To help out mothers to go from housewives to Rosie the Riveters, Porky plays babysitter to an unruly child, to say the least. The mom here is not only voiced by Bea Benaderet, but is modeled after her as well. If you've seen her on reruns of Beverly Hillbillies, Petticoat Junction, or even the old Burns and Allen show, they were in the ballpark. I think this one I remember from as far back as like TBS. Maybe it was on Channel 29, but not really in New York. This was also an extra on the DVD for the Errol Flynn film Uncertain Glory. There's a lot of World War II imagery in here. Understandable since it's the premise of the cartoon. The opening propaganda part of the picture looks really good, but once it gets to the cartoon part of it, it gets pretty grainy. Caddy Cornet is from 1953, directed by Friz Freleng, written by Warren Foster, and it stars Tweety and Sylvester. Now, Tweety's a rare bird being held for ransom by a bunch of mobsters. Sylvester just wants to eat him as usual, but ends up being a hero by rescuing him. This was the first appearance of the little mobster Rocky. Muggsy didn't come along until a year later. The final gag in the short is very similar to one of the ones in Tweety Pie. Now, this is definitely a network tune. I remember it on there quite a bit. The funny thing about the title Caddy Cornet is Chuck Jones ended up swiping the title for one of his Tom and Jerry cartoons in the 60s over at MGM. Restoration overall is pretty good, but there are some grainy shots here and there. Cross Country Detours is from 1940, directed by Tex Avery and written by Rich Hogan. One of the many travelogue tunes Avery did around this time, Tex, or Fred as he was known at the time, liked to push the envelope. For a sequence where a lizard shed her skin, he did it as a striptease and had a stripper come in and do the modeling for him. Robert C. Bruce did a lot of narration on these types of tunes, but not this one. Lou Marcel did it.
Eskimo dogs thrive in this climate and are perfectly happy here. Well, what's this fellow up to?
But one well-known Warner's voice artist did make an appearance here. In fact, her first, Bea Benaderet.
Hello, big boy.
This one was on TBS quite a bit, surprising for the amount of adult material in here. Now, as mentioned, technically at this point he was Fred Avery. He didn't take on the Tex name until he went over to MGM, but I'll be calling him Tex all the time, so just be aware of the difference. This was an extra on the Virginia City DVD. They love sticking these in Errol Flynn films, don't they? There's some debris here and there on the picture, but frankly, this one just looks spectacular. Daffy's Southern Exposure is from 1942, directed by Norm McCabe. Don Christensen did the script. This is one of the few black and white Daffy Ducks that hadn't been collected yet, so this winnows us down. I think there's only 2 or 3 of them left. Daffy decides not to fly south for the winter and ends up battling with a fox and weasel for food and shelter. It's very similar to the Woody Woodpecker cartoon Pantry Panic, which came out 6 months earlier. You can find that one anywhere since it's the only one of his to fall into the public domain. Plus, it has some slight similarities to the Daffy Flies North segment of the 1980 Easter special. As with most of the black and white cartoons outside of the Porky ones, this one really wasn't on TV. Turns out it wasn't even on HBO Max or Max. I think, if I remember right, this was one of the black and white Daffys without any easy way to watch it, but now that's been solved. Plus, in a bit of perfect timing, on December 6th, this premiered on Tune In With Me. The credits look a little washed out on this, but overall the restoration is pretty good. In fact, starting when Daffy hallucinates the steak, it's top-notch. Ding Dog Daddy is from 1942, directed by Friz Freleng and written by Ted Pierce. A dog falls in love with a metal female dog statue and gives it a kiss right when lightning strikes. Then she gets taken away for scrap metal during the war. This was in syndication and on quite a bit in the 70s. I remember a lot on Channel 5, maybe a little bit on TBS. Though Mel Blanc does some voices, the dog is done by Pinto Kovic, and he uses the voice of another well-known dog over at that other animation company. Yep, Goofy.
How about a little kiss there, beautiful?
Kovic did at least 2 Warner's cartoons in 1942. Maybe Walt was too busy concentrating on Bambi. This one's odd. It starts out stellar, but then they get to Daisy's yard and it looks like the cells got run over by a truck. Nothing you can do about those. They did their best with what they could clean up. The Eager Beaver is from 1946, directed by Chuck Jones and written by Ted Pierce. A group of beavers are working to dam a river. There's a great gag here for that.
The beavers dam the river. No, not that way. I mean, constructing a dam.
When one Eager Beaver tries to help by finding the biggest tree possible. This was in syndication and on TBS quite a bit, and as I mentioned, this was also recently on the Movies channel one Saturday morning in between the Laurel and Hardy movie and the Blondie movie. So it's good to see it there. Restoration is generally good, but the cells with the beaver foreman look pretty rough. Fair and Warmer is from 1946, directed by Chuck Jones and written by Michael Maltese and Ted Pierce. A worm is chased by a crow, who's chased by a cat, who's chased by a dog, who's chased by a dog catcher. Then the dog catcher is chased by his wife, and then his wife is chased by a mouse. Now this one was totally new to me, at least until I saw it on HBO Max a couple of years ago. It's still one of the ones on there. Restoration is good, but some splotchy cells, especially by the tree. Now it looks like Warner's may have missed something when putting together their Pepe Le Pew disc a little while ago. They included Odor of the Day, which has a skunk that may or may not be Pepe, but I'd say this tune has a stronger argument for inclusion. It's a Chuck Jones who did all the Pepes. He hops like him, and take a listen to the music. Now, he's not the amorous type, but if you want to stretch things, we may have a cameo here. Finn and Caddy is from 1943, directed by Chuck Jones and written by Michael Maltese. A cat wants to eat a fish, but you know the old saying,
Cats hate water.
thank you, Robert C. Bruce. This one was on Channel 5 quite a lot. It's funny, the IMDb trivia section has an entry noting that the backgrounds on this short were very abstract. Well, look at the date, 1943. Chuck was well into his experimental phase at this point. One part of it was the less than detailed backgrounds on the short. Now, this was actually out on DVD previously for the Bette Davis film Old Acquaintance. The only reason I knew that film exists is because the 1981 remake, Rich and Famous, with Candice Bergen and Jackie Bissett, was on HBO all the time when I first got cable. Restoration is okay for a 1943 cartoon. From Hand to Mouse is from 1944. It's directed by Chuck Jones and written by Michael Maltese, the usual pair. It's sort of a play on the old fable, The Lion and the Mouse, but with a twist. The mouse here is very similar to Chuck's other mice, Hubie and Bert. We'll see more of them probably sometime next year. He also looks like the one in Fairer and Warmer, come to think about it. Now, supposedly this was played on Cartoon Network, Boomerang, and recently MeTV, but I didn't see it in any of those places. I did see it on HBO Max before the Big Max purge. There's a bit of an uncomfortable racial bit in there, but it's not too long. Cell debris is really rough on this one. Ghost Wanted is from 1940, directed by Chuck Jones and written by Dave Monahan. A little ghost tries to haunt a house but has to beat out a bigger ghost. Voiced by Tex Avery. This clearly looks like a Casper precursor that maybe Famous Studios just pilfered. While I don't remember seeing it, it was part of TBS's Halloween special lineup in the late 80s and early 90s. I was working by that point and wasn't hanging around watching cartoons, but I am now. Now, interestingly, the address is 1313 Dracula Drive. Sounds like another 1313 in popular horror culture. Bit of a splotchy cell right at the opening, but looks pretty good overall. Greetings Bait is from 1943, directed by First Feeling and written by Ted Pierce. The Jerry Colonna imitating Wacky Worm returns. This time he's out to help a fisherman get some denizen of the deep onto his lure. I don't know if I've ever actually seen or heard the real Jerry Colonna, but I've seen so many characters I feel like I know him. He was a regular on the Bob Hope radio show, and his hello to Bob when he came on was, "Greetings, Gate." So that's where the name of the tune came from. One of the guys on the Hoffman boards pointed out that he was in an episode of The Monkees, so if I saw him anywhere, that's where it was. Now, this is an important one in the sense that it's the first time the music of Raymond Scott is used. It's not Powerhouse, but dinner music for a pack of hungry cannibals, which was also used a number of times later.
You wouldn't be so brave, Nave, if you weren't wearing that shell to protect you. Puny, isn't he?
This was nominated for the Oscar that year, but it didn't make the Academy Awards collection from the late 2000s. It did make it out on the Action in the North Atlantic DVD. Next is Hamateur Night from 1939, directed by Tex Avery. He also does the voice of the hippo.
That's a good one. Boy, that sure gets...
And written by Jack Miller. It's Amateur Night at the theater, which gives the guys an excuse for a lot of theater gags. Now, the main character of sorts looks like the old character Egghead, but has an outfit like the one Elmer Fudd would be wearing a few years later. I remember the ending to this, so I saw it at one point. It's probably TBS. This one does look spectacular. In fact, it looks a lot better than some of the later ones. Hairbreadth Hurry is from 1963, written by John Dunn and directed by Chuck Jones, one of his last at the studio before moving to MGM. And as you can see, Maurice Noble co-directed. This is the last cartoon teaming Bugs Bunny and Wile E. Coyote. In this case, Bugs is filling in for the Roadrunner, so it's basically a Roadrunner cartoon with him in it, and the Coyote remains silent, unlike the other Bugs and Wile E. cartoons. This was actually the first tune released after the main animation studio shut down. So considering this is basically a Roadrunner cartoon, just with Bugs Bunny in it, let's keep it consistent. Here's what the Coyote does to catch the rabbit. After a quick explanation for what he's doing there, Bugs gets away from the Coyote thanks to super speed vitamins, which then give out on him. Bugs does the old draw the line bit, and the road falls down with the Coyote on it. Coyote tries fishing line with carrot, but fish is on the other end. Coyote tries using a rock, seesaw, and gun, but splats into the rock and gets shot in the butt. Coyote tries shooting rifle at Bugs, but it's attached to a giant pipe contraption, which shoots him in the other end. Tries dropping anvil on Bugs, but the rabbit moves the target and the anvil hits him, sending the cliff falling. Anvil misses him, but he gets hit by truck. Tries to be human cannonball, but he gets shot into the ground. Bugs uses glue to catch Coyote, who goes flying. He takes a call on the phone and ends up over a cliff. Then Bugs cuts the phone line. Generally, the ones from the 60s don't really need too much work done, so it looks great right off the bat. Like I said, this was the last of 5 cartoons with the two, but annoyingly, only 4 of them are on Blu-ray at the moment. Operation Rabbit is on Platinum Collection Volume 3. We'll probably get to that one by the spring. And Rabbit's Feet and Compressed Hare are on the Bugs Bunny 80th Anniversary set. This leaves the second tune, 1956's To Hare is Human, stranded in standard definition. It's on Golden Collection Volume 4. But if you're going to do the other 4, you can't leave that one out there like this. I'll mention it at some point where I think it should have gone, but if there's another volume or 2 of this series, I'd advocate a space for it, even over some of those that haven't been on digital video yet. A Hick, a Slick, and a Chick is from 1948, directed by Art Davis, written by Davis's usual writers Lloyd Turner and Bill Scott. As the name implies, a hick from the country looks for his chick and finds her with some city slick. Blackie, the Slick, bears more than a passing resemblance to Clark Gable, and Elmo and Daisy Lou are in the Little Abner Daisy May template. Now, the oddest character here is the cat Hermit. He looks like Sylvester, but with totally different colors, yet bears the name of another cartoon character who's best known for hanging around with a cat, namely Hyman, from the famous Herman and Catnip cartoons. But they didn't team up until 2 years later, and Catnip had red fur like Warner's Herman. There's a lot going on here, and all this for a tune I've never seen before. There's a couple of cell scratches here or there, but otherwise it's crystal clear. Hiss and Makeup is from 1943, directed by Fritz Freeling and written by Michael Maltese. A dog, a cat, and a canary all vie for the attention in an old lady's house. She kind of made a later appearance in the Bugs Bunny Short Hair Force, which was the precursor to Tweety Pie. This one I remember from TBS. It was also on the DVD for the Errol Flynn film, See Him Again, Edge of Darkness. A couple of cell scratches, but overall very crisp. A Hound for Trouble is from 1951, directed by Chuck Jones and written by Michael Maltese, as usual. This one is a Charlie Dog short without Porky. Charlie ends up in Italy but has a problem capiching. He ends up harassing a restaurant owner like he's Porky. Maltese not only wrote the short, but also provided the voice of one of the customers.
I'm a want una bella piatta una cacciatore di tazzini curavo di marinara di la piazza rigottini mozzarella fine.
This one is on syndication, but Channel 5 cut out about a third of the middle section. I'm not sure if they did it because they thought it was insulting to Italians, or because what they left in isn't very flattering either.
Azzamara, hey, azzamara for you. You eat my raviola and my pasta fasola too. I'ma give you cacciatore and a pizza that's good to chew. Azzamara, you know like me, hey, azzamara for you.
It was previously on DVD for the film On Moonlight Bay. Errol Flynn's not in that one. The background in the restaurant is a bit grainy, but otherwise it's very nice looking. I Want to Be a Sailor is from 1937, directed by Tex Avery, written by him as well, along with Ben Hardaway. Title kind of says it all, as a kid parrot heads off to the sea, but not without complications. There's a huge cast in this one. Mel's on board as the chatty duck he did in a couple of other cartoons.
Hey, fella, what you doing? What you making? What's the barrel for? What you building? What's the hammer for? What you making?
Billy Bletcher's Papa and Elvira Allman, no relation to Dwayne or Greg that I'm aware of, is Mama.
A fine father he's been, the seagoing slob.
Tommy Bond is one of the other parrots. High-pitched Bernice Hansen is the girl parrot, and child actor Robert Winkler is Pete Parrot. He later became a successful attorney for child actors. I don't think I ever saw this one before, but it wasn't due to lack of visibility. This one fell into the public domain pretty early and ended up on God knows how many of those old compilations. It may be out there streaming on one for all I know. Putting it out on this disc was a way for Warner's to claw it back a little bit. It was also on the Kid Galahad DVD, the Edward G. Robinson version, not the Elvis one. Doesn't look like they were able to find the original title card to this one. It's still got the blue ribbon one. Apart from that, it's another one that actually looks better than some of the later cartoons. The Leghorn Blows at Midnight from 1950, directed by Robert McKimson, written by Warren Foster. Foghorn Leghorn, Barnyard Dog, and Henry Hawk battle once more, this time over who's a pheasant. Even though the title is fairly well known, I don't think I ever saw this one before. The title of the tune is a play on the old Jack Benny film, The Horn Blows at Midnight. He says it drove him out of the movies. Well, he did end up in a later Looney Tunes short down the line and did the cameo in It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, so I guess they lured him back in. Generally, the restoration on this is pretty good, but the doghouse definitely has the most debris. Lickety-Splat is from 1961, directed by Chuck Jones and Abe Levitow, with Jones doing the story. So now here's the rundown for the actual Roadrunner and Coyote team up on the disc. After Roadrunner gets away, Coyote tries using skis on wheels, flies off a cliff and gets stuck in the rocks, tries using skis as springboard but skis break, tries shooting himself in a giant bow but bow falls off cliff and sends him back into the rocks, uses balloon to drop exploding darts, one blows up his balloon, another blows up his parachute, as he tries to use hammer, exploding dart hits it, tries using boomerang, but it comes back with a dart on it. One dart blows up gun. Another blows rock onto Coyote. One blows up cliff. Coyote jumps off following anvil. Rock with two darts falls on him, but they just say the end. This one is kind of a precursor to the later Rudy LaRiva Roadrunners that tended to focus on just one of the Coyote's plans and the various ways it goes wrong. At some point, I'm going to go back and make a defense of the Rudy LaRiva Roadrunners. Believe it or not, they're better than you remember. They actually ended up reusing some of the animation here in Hairbreadth Hurry. This one, like most of the latter Roadrunners, was a network short. Again, since it's from the 60s, it's pretty clean to start off with. One Meat Brawl is from 1947, directed by Robert McKimson and written by Warren Foster. McKimson means Porky versus somebody, and this time out, it's a groundhog who's prepared for his big day on February 2nd. Porky's helped out by hunting dog Mandrake, who's not exactly the sharpest knife in the drawer. This was the first time McKimson directed a solo Porky tune, and he put him right into his conflict template. This one I remember from TVS, and it was previously on the Porky Pig Hilarious Ham Superstars DVD. That one had some muddy sound. It's been cleaned up here along with the picture. Very nice looking. The Penguin Parade is from 1938, directed by Tex Avery and written by Ben Hardaway. It's a nightclub for penguins, so we get a lot of penguin-related jokes with a few walrus ones tossed in. With voice work provided by the director, he always seemed to provide the voices for the big characters.
Did you ever hear this story?
I might have seen this on TBS, but it certainly wasn't shown much. One thing I noticed a lot in these mid to late 30s tunes is that a bunch of them were done by Paul Smith. He later moved over to Universal and ended up doing a lot of the later Chilly Willy cartoons that have been on TV a lot now on Tune In With Me. Like in the late 40s tunes, you sometimes see the name of J.C. Melendez, Later, under his nickname Bill, he became one of the driving forces behind all the Peanuts specials. Restoration on this short is generally very good, but there was some blurring on some of the singing sequences. Rabbit Rampage is from 1955, directed by Chuck Jones, written by Michael Maltese. Okay, let's just come right out and say it. This is a total remake of Duck Amuck, this time with Bugs Bunny as the victim and Elmer as the secret animator.
Well, anyway, I finally got even with that screwy wabbit.
Does it make it any less funny knowing that? Nope, this is one of my all-time favorite Bugs Bunny cartoons, and this is my favorite part.
You golden blank staggered black scarlet blighted black bunker, you trying to do?
I loved it so much that if it was on the Channel 5 show right when my sister and I got home from school at 3 o'clock, she had to go watch her soap opera upstairs. It was on Golden Collection Volume 6, and it's kind of similar to Friz Freeling's issue of remaking his shorts, but this one's more like Duck Amuck is Rio Bravo, and this is El Dorado. Same plot, different circumstances and actions, getting to the same place. And like Duck Amuck, since it was mostly on white, it was pretty clean to start with. The Rebel Without Claws is from 1961, written and directed by Friz Freeling. Tweety and Sylvester are in the Civil War, and the bird has to get a message across enemy lines. But Tweety is actually a Confederate soldier. They'd never be able to do this today. It's basically a remake of Plain Daffy, which Friz did not originally do. The title is a play on the James Dean film Rebel Without a Cause, but as you can see, the plots are totally different. This was on the network from time to time. Like most of the ones from the 60s, it looks good right off the drawing board, though this one has a bit of debris in the opening. Finally, we have The Wacky Worm from 1941, directed by Friz Freeling and written by Dave Monahan. The title character makes his debut here and is yet another Jerry Colonna caricature, which was the 1940s equivalent of a meme for the gang of termite terrorists. They used him a lot. Meanwhile, we kids watching these in the 70s and 80s only knew him from these cartoons. I couldn't even name you a movie he was in. Even Hugh Herbert I got to see for real in a couple of Volandi movies. This is the only one on the set that doesn't look very crisp. Supposedly it was sourced from a generation down from the original negative. It's definitely not unwatchable. It's very nice for what it is, but you can clearly see a difference. That having been said, there are some very good looking sequences. So as you can see, it's a very eclectic bunch of cartoons. A couple quibbles. There are still other bug shorts that need some kind of upgraded digital release. So as much as I love Rabbit Rampage, they could have probably held off on that one. And Daffy only has one cartoon, and it's black and white. You know. But let's face it, for a lot of these other cartoons, there's just not a home for most of them, if not for something like this. So, you know, again, qualified thumbs up. You're not getting a lot with it. You're just getting this. But they're all well done. They're all well preserved. They put a lot of effort into it, and they did put a thought. They did put a thought in the flow. Even though it's alphabetical, it does work very well. So, thumbs up for this. Definitely worth getting and enjoying because you're not going to get these tunes anywhere else. Okay, so before we go, first a couple of quick corrections. Jeff Bergman is basically the go-to guy for the Looney Tunes characters. He's the one who did it on the Looney Tunes show, and I think he's still doing it now for the newer ones. Jeff Bennett did do Sylvester in Museum Scream. He's, best known to me anyway as the voice of one of my favorite characters, Johnny Bravo. Oh, mama. So just wanted to get that straightened out, that Jeff B mix-up. Then also, I was just watching Boomerang, and Haunting We Will Go was just on. They're actually doing whatever cartoons they have now. I think there's 133 of them. They just play them alphabetically over and over, so you know what you're going to get when you get it. It's almost like the 2-hour blocks, just one big 133 tune block. So I was watching that, and I listened carefully, and it turns out the little duck that's dressed in a witch costume is Daffy's nephew, not his niece. I'm like, wait, why do they have the little boy duck go in the girl's outfit? And I'm like, that wasn't a thing back then. I know it is now, but So just wanted to get that out. It's Daffy's nephew, not his niece. One other thing, speaking of Boomerang, they will not be adding any of the Christmas tunes, like there's one with Tweety Sylvester, there's one with Sniffles the Mouse. They're not going to be adding any of those in the rotation like they've done the past couple holidays, but they will be showing the Bugs Bunny Looney Christmas Tales show. They're going to be doing it at least once on Christmas Eve and once on Christmas Day. And in fact, I think MeTV is also showing it. I think they're showing it Saturday, I think like at either 9 or 9:30. So if you want to see that one, it'll be around this weekend if you don't have it on one of the previous DVD releases. So that's it for now. This has been a good 3 months, a lot of views, so thank you very much. So everybody out there, have a Merry Christmas, and it's on to next year.
Next episode, we move on to Platinum Collection Volume 2 with the evolution of Bugs Bunny and the Hunting Trilogy, among many others. I'm John Harcher. Thanks for watching, and Merry Christmas.